In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is...
While giving birth to our son, my husband was at a party and said, "I lost track of time when he arrived at the hospital." But the photos on social media revealed something that broke my heart. His ex was there, and now everything made sense. Last week, I gave birth to my precious son, and although I'd like to say that the whole experience was magical, the truth is that labor was brutally painful. I suffered indescribable pain. And even though I already knew what to expect, because I had informed myself about the experience of becoming a mother, living it firsthand is a lesson that lasts much longer. The pain was so unbearable that I have nothing to compare it to. The contractions came in waves, each one more intense than the last, and I truly felt like my body was tearing apart. I had heard stories about how painful giving birth could be, but nothing prepares you for the reality. I remember gripping the hospital bed so hard that I thought I would bend it. All I wanted was for it to be over. And although I knew that pain would bring my son into the world, at that moment that didn't make it any more bearable, no matter how many times the nurses repeated it to me. As if the unbearable pain wasn't enough, what made it even worse was that my husband Nico wasn't there to comfort me. He wasn't present at all, not even to keep me company or make me feel a little more supported. I felt terribly alone in that delivery room, surrounded by nurses and doctors, but without the person who should have been there the most. For context, Nico and I have been married for 3 years. We met in a supermarket, something unusual, when he saw me for the first time and decided to approach me. At first, I wasn't completely convinced. We went out a few times, and although it was nice, I wasn't sure he was the right one for me. But what made me change my mind was his sincerity. He never gave up on me, and there was something genuine about the way he cared for me. I grew up in a dysfunctional home, where stability was just a dream. My parents had a toxic relationship, and that instability left a deep mark on me. That's why I've always longed to feel safe, to find someone who would make me feel protected and give me stability. At first, Nico provided that. He was constant, reliable, and offered something very different from what I had experienced with my parents. That's also why it was initially difficult for me to connect, due to my insecurities. Over time, we moved in together and decided to manage our finances separately. At that time, it made sense. We both had our own jobs, our own responsibilities, and we wanted to maintain some independence even while being together. Then came the wedding, which took me by surprise, but when he proposed, at least at that moment, I knew it was what I wanted because I loved him. Until last year, I never had reasons to doubt that choice. He was a good husband back then. He helped me, was affectionate, and cared for me. Until then, I thought I had chosen my life partner well. All this changed when Nico lost his job. That's when a breaking point occurred in our relationship, when we began to drift apart. If I could give advice to any woman considering marriage, it would be this: don't marry a man until you've seen how he behaves in his worst moments. Something I didn't see until it was too late. If I had known how Nico would react to adversity, how he would change when faced with failure, I would never have married him. Losing his job transformed him into someone I barely recognized. At first, I tried to be understanding. Losing a job is difficult for anyone, and I knew he felt lost, insecure, perhaps even ashamed. But instead of using that time to reorganize and find a new opportunity, he let resentment build up. I had been working hard at my own job, and at the worst possible time, a few weeks after he became unemployed, I received a promotion. Instead of being happy for me, since the extra money would be useful, he began to resent me. He would get furious over anything, but especially if we talked about money or work. Then the trust issues began. Suddenly, everything I did seemed suspicious to him. If I went out with my friends or spent extra time with my coworkers, he would accuse me of neglecting him or, worse, of cheating on him. I never gave him reasons to doubt me, never did anything remotely suspicious, but that didn't prevent him from becoming paranoid. He started checking my phone when I wasn't looking, reviewing my messages, my social media. He even checked my laptop several times. There was nothing compromising he could find, so I never stopped him. It didn't seem right, but I also had nothing to hide. I thought if I let him see that, maybe he would calm down. But no matter how much I tried to prove my loyalty, his insecurities only grew. I tried to do everything possible to support him during that difficult time. I encouraged him to keep looking for work, sent him job offers, and did everything within my power. He applied, but the constant rejection only seemed to make things worse. Each rejection affected him more. You could see in his reactions and on his face that he was suffering. Instead of continuing to try, he isolated himself. He stopped taking care of himself. He wouldn't shave, barely changed his clothes, and most days he didn't even bother to shower. At first, he at least helped a little around the house, washing dishes, taking out the trash, or making the bed, but after a while he hardly did anything. His days revolved around playing video games and watching TV. It was his only escape. I would come home exhausted from work, only to find him exactly where I had left him in the morning, on the couch, controller in hand, eyes glued to the screen. The apartment was a mess, the sink full of dirty dishes, clothes piling up, dust covering surfaces, and everything fell on me. Asking for help made things worse, because it put him in a worse mood. I felt exhausted, mentally and physically. I felt like I was carrying the weight of two people, while he disconnected from reality. I kept hoping things would get better, that he would wake up and react, but instead, everything took a completely unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, as if we didn't have enough problems, Nico started insisting on the idea of expanding our family. He wanted us to try to have a baby. He became obsessed with the idea, mentioning it constantly in our conversations and telling me how much he wanted to be a father. Although I had always dreamed that someday we would become parents, I knew that simply wasn't the right time. I needed him to recover first, to find a stable job, to prove to me that he was capable of becoming a responsible partner again. But every time I tried to explain this to him, he insisted that time was running out for us, and that we shouldn't keep postponing it. He even started using my age against me, reminding me that my biological clock was ticking. He tried to convince me that even if he couldn't find a well-paying job, he would accept anything, even poorly paid, just to contribute some money to the household. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about responsibility, maturity, emotional stability, and at that moment, Nico had none of that. How could I bring a child into the world if he couldn't even take care of himself? Then, 9 months ago, I discovered I was pregnant. It surprised me a lot, since I had always been careful, or at least I thought so, but somehow it happened. Nico, on the other hand, was euphoric. As soon as I told him, his mood changed completely. He couldn't stop smiling and immediately started calling relatives to share the news. He told everyone how excited he was to be a father, that it was the best thing that had happened to him in life. Seeing his enthusiasm, I wanted to believe that maybe it would be the push he needed. Perhaps this baby would motivate him to step up, to take control of his life again, to become the man I fell in love with. But as the months passed, I realized that nothing had changed, absolutely nothing. Nico still couldn't find a job. He was still spending his days playing video games and doing practically nothing. And every time I reminded him of his promise, that he himself had said he would accept any job just to contribute, he would get upset and ignore me. He insisted that he wasn't going to settle for just anything, that he wanted a job like the one he had lost. All of this led to constant fights, in which he basically emotionally manipulated me to make me feel that I was the irrational one for asking him to start earning money. He constantly repeated that I didn't understand, that I didn't know how difficult it was to find a good job at that time. He said he was waiting for the right opportunity, but that opportunity never came. Months passed, and he was still doing nothing to improve our situation. Meanwhile, I was pregnant, exhausted, and carrying all the responsibility. I paid all the bills, maintained the house, and on top of that, carried our son in my womb. It was too much, and finally, I set a limit. A few months ago, Nico was basically living like a stay-at-home husband without any responsibilities. So I told him directly, if he wasn't going to contribute financially, then he at least had to take care of the household chores. It was the least he could do. It wasn't fair that I worked all day, came home exhausted, and still had to clean up after him. If he was home all day, the least he could do was make sure the house didn't look like a disaster zone. Of course, he tried to argue. He told me he didn't know how to do household chores, as if I was going to believe that an adult man doesn't know how to wash dishes or make a bed. I told him straight, "You're an adult, you can learn." And if he really felt incapable, then he could use his own emergency fund and hire a housekeeper, because I wasn't going to do everything alone anymore. Reluctantly, he agreed. So in the last few months, he started doing more household chores, although it was evident that he disliked it. And to be fair, he wasn't very good at it either. He ruined the laundry more times than I can count, mixing whites with colors, shrinking clothes, and using too much detergent. I had to constantly remind him to load the dishwasher, and even then, sometimes he would forget. He kept telling me that doing household chores made him feel less of a man, and that it was humiliating for him. He was so insecure about it that he begged me not to tell anyone, because, according to him, it made him look like a loser for being at home. Last week, my due date arrived, the moment I had been looking forward to, but also dreading, because I knew I was going to need all the support possible. I had told Nico well in advance that he had to be there for me. It wasn't a request, it was just common sense. I was about to give birth to our son, and I needed him by my side. But out of nowhere, a few days before, Nico dropped a bombshell. He told me he had plans to go to a college party organized by one of his former classmates, where all his university friends would gather. At first, I thought he was joking. A college party? Right when our baby could arrive at any moment? But no, he was completely serious. He told me he hadn't seen his college friends for a long time, and he really wanted to go, if only for a few hours. I told him directly, "I need you here. What if my water breaks? Who will take me to the hospital?" But he begged me to let him go. He swore over and over that he would have his phone on hand and would answer immediately if I needed him. To reassure me, he even called his mother and asked her to come stay with me in case I went into labor while he was away. And then he made me a promise. If my water broke, he would leave immediately and meet me at the hospital. Well, guess what? It wasn't even 3 hours before my water broke. Panic immediately seized me. It was the moment of truth, to see if Nico would be with me for the most important part of the pregnancy. I started calling him frantically, expecting him to answer immediately, just as he had promised. But he didn't. His phone went straight to voicemail. Again and again. Voicemail. I sent him text messages. No response. I called him again, over and over, leaving desperate messages, telling him the baby was coming and that he needed to meet me at the hospital as soon as possible. He still didn't respond. I was terrified. This was supposed to be one of the most important moments of our lives, and the one person who should have been by my side wasn't answering. Fortunately, my mother-in-law kept her calm and helped me get into the car. She patiently drove me to the hospital while I writhed in the seat, clutching my belly, trying to breathe through the pain. And even then, I kept calling Nico again and again, but he never answered. Not once. As you already know, I gave birth to our son without him. Instead of my husband, it was my mother-in-law who held my hand. She was the one who reassured me when I couldn't bear the pain, who told me I was strong and that I could do it. She was as furious with Nico as I was. How could he not be there? How could he ignore all my calls? Where the hell was he? That entire night, Nico was completely missing. It wasn't until the early hours of the morning, long after I had already given birth, that he finally saw my messages and rushed to the hospital, acting as if he was very concerned about me. One would think that, given the circumstances, his first words to me would at least be an apology. That he would at least try to explain himself with some absurd excuse. Like a seagull swallowed his phone and he got lost in the middle of the forest. I don't know, even a lie that ridiculous would have been better than what he said. But no. Instead, when I asked for an explanation, he simply repeated the same thing over and over. I lost track of time. Lost track of time? As if I were asking him why he was late for dinner instead of why he missed the birth of his son. I was beyond fury. I was so angry, and my blood pressure was so high that I thought one of my arteries was going to burst and bathe everything in blood. And his look of disbelief as he stared at me angrily didn't help at all. I can say he was lucky there wasn't a scalpel nearby. I showed him my phone, my 25 missed calls, my more than 50 text messages. I asked him, how the hell could you ignore all of this? What were you doing? And that's when Nico admitted it. He had put his phone on Do Not Disturb mode. But as he wasn't happy with this explanation, he looked for a way to justify himself. He told me he had been depressed for months, but that seeing his college friends, he finally felt happy. That he never checked his phone, that he didn't even consider that I might go into labor because he thought we still had time. He kept insisting it wasn't a big deal, that his mother was with me, and that he just wanted one night without distractions, that it wasn't a crime to catch up with his old friends. It wouldn't be if your wife wasn't in labor, but leaving her to go to a party and not answering the phone is the most selfish attitude I've ever seen in my life. After this, we had a monumental fight. And since that day, I have refused to let him stay with me or see our son. I asked him to go to his mother's house for a few days because seeing his face makes me sick. My mother-in-law is also furious with him. She has barely spoken to him since that night, and I know she is as disappointed as I am. If someone is wrong and everyone tells them so, the normal thing would be for them to realize their mistake at some point. Well, that's not Nico. He still thinks I'm the one who's overreacting. He tells me that both his mother and I are too upset with him, that all he did was enjoy a party, that I just need to forgive him. He swears his actions were harmless, and that I should let him see his son. I still haven't talked to more people. That's why I want to ask here. Am I the bad guy if I don't forgive the father of my child? Update 1. I've read your comments and I've been processing everything. I can't ignore the possibility that maybe Nico manipulated my birth control to get me pregnant on purpose. I admit that I hadn't even considered this idea before, but after reading some of your comments and reflecting on our situation, the more I think about it, I believe there could be some truth to that. Nico clearly wanted to trap me with a baby. He's been unemployed for a while, and during all this time, I've been supporting him completely. He knows perfectly well how well he lives with me. He doesn't have to work, doesn't pay bills, barely does household chores, and still leads a comfortable life because I take care of everything. It wouldn't be far-fetched to think that perhaps he wanted me to get pregnant to prevent me from even considering leaving him. A baby would mean I would be tied to him forever, and if that was really the case, I don't even know what to say. But that's not the only reason I can't forgive him. He also missed the birth of our son. He was the one who wanted so badly to be a father, who insisted that we have a baby, and yet he wasn't there when we needed him most. That alone is enough to devastate me. And now, there's something else that won't leave me in peace. A horrible feeling that Nico is hiding something from me. He keeps repeating that he simply got distracted at the party and lost track of time, but it doesn't add up. Something doesn't fit. Nico promised me he would answer my calls no matter what. Even when he's been drunk, he has always responded when I call him. So what was different this time? What could have been so important, so absorbing, that he couldn't even look at his phone for hours while I was in labor? And then there's the other detail. The detail that hasn't stopped spinning in my head since I learned about that party. His ex was also there. This woman was supposedly the love of his life before she cheated on him and left him for someone else. But that night, she was at the party. I discovered it after reviewing some photos that Nico's friends posted on social media. I went snooping on his ex's profile and saw that she is now divorced. And I know with certainty that Nico still feels something for her. He's never said it openly, but I notice it. I see it in the way he talks about her, in the way he mentions her out of nowhere, in how he acts every time someone says her name. And now, knowing that she was there that night, I can't help but wonder, was she the distraction? Update 2. I knew it. I knew something didn't add up. I knew he was hiding something from me. And now, after all my suspicions, after all the doubts, I finally have the truth. Nico cheated on me. That night, while I was alone in labor, he wasn't just drinking with his friends. He was with her. He was with his beloved ex. And just as I suspected, they kissed. The reason he put his phone on Do Not Disturb wasn't just because he wanted to have a good time with his friends. It was because he wanted to spend time with his ex, to have a distraction-free night with her. Clearly, he didn't want messages from his pregnant wife, or calls from the woman carrying his child in her womb, or reminders that he had a family waiting for him, because at that moment, he simply didn't care. All this time, every time I tried to confront him about that night, he mocked me and lied to my face. "I was just with my friends," he would tell me. "You're overreacting, love. You always do this, you always make a drama out of nothing." He made me feel like I was crazy. He made me think I was an insecure, hormonal woman, looking for problems where there were none. But like a dog with its bone, I didn't let go. I trusted my instincts and pressured him until he broke. If I hadn't insisted, he would never have confessed. I feel disgusted. I feel enraged beyond words. Even after admitting that he cheated on me while I was giving birth to his son, he still doesn't take responsibility. He keeps insisting that it was just a kiss and nothing more. A kiss is bad enough, but I can't believe him that it was just that either. He lost track of time over a kiss? It must have been a very important kiss, perhaps a kiss in a more intimate place. He already lied to me once. What else is he hiding? And to top it off, he blames me for everything. That's right, he has told me over and over that our marriage has been unhappy, that he just wanted to feel good for once, that seeing his ex brought back old feelings, that it reminded him of a time when he felt like a man, when he took care of her, and that living with me hasn't made him feel that way for a long time. And worst of all, he insists he doesn't regret what he did. Let me repeat that. While I was bringing our baby into the world, his father, my husband, was kissing another woman and doesn't think it's serious. And that's if we believe his story, which has more holes than his old underwear. Now I can say with absolute certainty that it's over. And you know what? I'm not going to go quietly. I'm going to make him pay for what he did to me. He's not going to like having trapped me with a baby. I told my in-laws what Nico did, and they are as disgusted as I am. My mother-in-law has openly told him that he has to leave and find his own place, because she is not going to continue supporting an unfaithful, unemployed, and pathetic man who destroyed his own family. She is as outraged as I am. As I write this, I'm devastated. Why did he do this to us? Why did he take advantage of me this way? And now, because of him, he has lost everything. He has no wife, no home, and no family. I gave him everything these years. I supported him when he had nothing. I carried this relationship on my shoulders while he did nothing. He says he doesn't regret it, but let's see if that's true when I make him pay for all of this. Let's see how much he maintains this idea that he did nothing wrong and that all of this is okay. Update 3. I was postponing the moment to sit down and write this, but now that I've begun, I'm going to tell you everything that happened. First and most importantly, my son and I are fine. In fact, we are more than fine. I moved to a new place, a fresh start just for the two of us. This decision has logistical reasons, being closer to my family so they can help me with my son, because I wasn't going to expect my former mother-in-law to do it. Nico and I are officially divorced, and I've been able to leave the lawyers and my ex-husband behind. I should have stabbed the pen when I signed that document, but it felt good. It was time to end it with that good for nothing. And then there's this part, the one that initially devastated me, but that now I realize is for the best. My ex has completely abandoned our son. He signed over full custody to me because, get ready for this, his ex is now pregnant with his child. Yes, the same ex he cheated on me with is expecting a baby from him. Remember how he swore they never slept together? Maybe I wasn't paying attention in sex education classes, but apparently there's a new way to get pregnant, and it's through kisses. Did he kiss an egg? He could lie to me that it was just a kiss, but he couldn't hide that he intentionally turned off his phone. I don't know what's more pathetic, giving up his parental rights over my son, or getting back with a woman who cheated on him. I know he wouldn't come back to me, but he seems to have crawled back to his ex. I'm so glad I never believed his lies. If I had stayed with him, right now I would be devastated by this news. At first I couldn't even process it, the fact that he voluntarily decided to give up his parental rights over our son, but then I understood. This is the kind of person he is. He's a selfish and irresponsible man who never deserved to be a father in the first place. And if he's willing to cut ties with his own son so easily, then, honestly, I prefer to raise my son without him. My baby deserves much more than a father who sees him as a mere inconvenience. But don't worry, he's still paying. Giving up parental rights doesn't exempt you from paying child support. Even if he wants to pretend our son doesn't exist, I made sure he continues paying child support, month after month. He may have run away from his responsibilities as a father, but he's not going to run away from his financial obligation to the child he helped bring into this world. And believe me, he has tried to escape that responsibility, even requested a paternity test. But science has spoken and he must pay until my son turns 18. A light at the end of all this? My former in-laws have continued to support me even after the divorce. They haven't turned their backs on their grandson and are still there for him. They take care of him from time to time, and their love for him is genuine, something for which I will always be grateful. At least I know my son will still have loving grandparents who will be there for him, even though his own father has decided to abandon him. Update 4. Nico and his ex got married shortly after our divorce. Many thought the child with his new wife wasn't his, that would be his karma. But the real karma is that it is his, and that his wife cheated on him again, asking him for a divorce. According to what my former mother-in-law has told me, both things are not related. Despite the infidelity, Nico still wanted to try with her, perhaps thinking that the third time would be the charm. But she made it clear to him that she didn't want to continue with someone who couldn't get a job. He's still unemployed and was repeating the same story as with me. Not working, not contributing, expecting her to support him. Having to pay me child support was one of the reasons he wasn't looking for work, in addition to his natural tendency to be lazy and a leech. But now he has 2 child support payments to make, and nowhere to stay. The only way to avoid paying is to live on the street. But knowing Nico and how much he likes to live comfortably, that's not going to happen. Now he has to get a job one way or another to support himself and his 2 children. That's what I call karma. And he's already regretting everything. He's told his mother, who replied that he shouldn't set foot in her house again until he gets a job and pays all the back child support. His father, on the other hand, was more direct and told him, "Son, start behaving like a man and stop doing stupid things. And while you're trying, see if you can grow a pair down there." My example has never been to crawl back to a woman who cheated on you by cheating on your wife. You make me ashamed. That would be all. I hope that in a few months the payments will start coming in, and if possible, let it be sooner. Edit. Child support payments have already started coming in, even the back payments.